Equals Rome, April 1939. The air carried the scent of rain and gun oil, a strange mix of spring renewal and coming war. Count Galeazzo Ciano, Italy's young foreign minister and Mussolini's son-in-law, stood by the window of the Palazzo Chigi, watching black-shirted militiamen march past below. Europe was trembling. Hitler had marched into Prague a month earlier, and now Berlin called for a new accord, an unbreakable military bond. Ciano's hand lingered over the telegram from Ribbentrop. Urgent, discuss the political and military pact. He knew this meant entanglement, not alliance. Mussolini, in his bombastic certainty, saw glory, yet Ciano sensed doom. The marble halls felt colder that night as he whispered to himself, "Italy has much to lose and Germany everything to gain." He folded the letter, sealing Italy's uncertain future with one hesitant breath.
Eccles. By mid-May, Berlin's skies hung heavy with smoke from factories turning out weapons for a war not yet declared. Ciano arrived to meet Joachim von Ribbentrop, the German foreign minister. The Reich chancellery gleamed with cold marble. Every corridor echoed with the march of soldiers. Ribbentrop greeted him with a stiff smile, saying, "Our nations must stand as one steel before the storm." Ciano replied carefully, "But steel can break when stretched too far." Hitler entered suddenly, his eyes fixed and fervent. He spoke of destiny, of Europe united under power, of enemies real and imagined. Ciano watched him, noting the fever in his speech, the trembling in his hands. When the meeting ended, Ribbentrop pressed the draft treaty into his palm. "Commitment to war, together, in all matters," it read. Ciano's heart sank. He understood that Italy's future now teetered on a blade.
Back in Rome, on May 18th, Mussolini gathered his advisors in the Palazzo Venezia. The Duce's voice thundered beneath the frescoed ceiling, drowning out the rumble of thunder beyond. "Germany stands ready for greatness," he announced. "Italy will not remain a spectator." Ciano, seated beside him, concealed his unease. The Italian army was unprepared, planes scarce, fuel short, munitions dwindling. Yet Mussolini saw only grandeur. That evening, Ciano walked alone through the empty forum, the ruins lit by flickering lamps. He thought of Caesar's ambition, of empires that rose and fell on pride. His assistant asked softly, "Will we sign at Celenza?" Ciano replied, "History demands caution, but Mussolini demands history." Behind him, thunder cracked like cannon fire, a premonition born of marble and storm.
May 22, 1939. In Berlin, two flags, black, white, and red, and green, white, and red, fluttered side by side over the Chancellery courtyard. Inside, the signing table gleamed beneath chandeliers. Ribbentrop and Ciano faced each other, pens poised. Reporters murmured, cameras flashed. Mussolini, absent, demanded spectacle through telegrams. In that room, silence reigned, as the diplomats wrote their names upon the parchment binding Italy and Germany in friendship and alliance. As Ciano's signature dried, he felt the weight of iron shackles rather than steel strength. Ribbentrop smiled faintly. "History is made," he whispered. Ciano looked up and replied, "So is tragedy." Outside, the Berlin crowd cheered, unaware that this pact, so triumphantly named, was the beginning of the world's greatest calamity.
Returning to Rome, Ciano was greeted not by applause, but by murmurs. Generals whispered that Italy could not fight. Industry lagged behind Germany's thunderous pace. Yet Mussolini stood on his balcony, proclaiming alliance as destiny. "Our pact is a sword forged in faith," he cried to the masses. That night, at his desk, Ciano reread the secret military clauses. Italy must support Germany in any conflict. He felt the chill of inevitability. Emilia, his wife and Mussolini's daughter, entered quietly. "Galeazzo," she said, "do you believe in what he is doing?" He answered without looking up, "I believe in Italy, but not in the path he has chosen." Her hand touched his shoulder, trembling.
Outside, the radio announced Hitler's new demands on Poland. The drums of war began beating in earnest.
Equals September 1st, 1939. Germany invaded Poland. News crackled over Italian radios. Blitzkrieg, lightning war. Ciano stood in Mussolini's chambers as reports poured in. Hitler expected Italian action immediately. But the Duce hesitated. His armies were not ready, his people unprepared. "We will remain non-belligerent for now," Mussolini muttered, eyes fixed on the map. Ciano felt a rare relief. Yet he also sensed Italy's dishonor in the eyes of a furious Berlin. Letters from Ribbentrop demanded explanation. Ciano's diary that night recorded simple words: "The Pact of Steel, yes, but of rusted steel." The continent trembled as bombs fell over Warsaw, heralding a storm that would consume all. Ciano looked eastward and whispered, "The world has tipped, and we helped to push it."
Winter descended over Europe, and with it came growing pressure from Germany. Letters from Ribbentrop grew colder, each phrased as both reproach and demand. Mussolini raged at his ministers, repeating, "Italy will not be a puppet." Ciano, weary and pale, advised restraint. The Italian people were hungry, the factories silent. Yet propaganda screamed of brotherhood with Germany. "We are the same steel," the posters read. Ciano visited the airfields outside Milan, empty hangars echoing with footsteps, broken machinery glinting under frost. He knew the truth. Italy was not ready, yet war would come anyway. As he looked upon the deserted runway, he murmured, "Alliances make promises, but they don't deliver mercy."
Spring 1940. The German triumphs in Norway and France dazzled Mussolini. He saw Europe reshaped and longed for Italy's moment of glory. In one heated cabinet meeting, Ciano warned, "Our steel is not tempered, it will shatter." Mussolini slammed his fist. History rewards the daring. Within weeks, Italy declared war on France and Britain. Crowds filled the streets waving flags, unaware of the cost. Ciano watched from a balcony, the roar of the multitudes mixing with distant thunder. He recorded in his diary, "The Duce has joined the war, but we have only joined our peril." He stared into Rome's sunset, where light and shadow fought upon marble walls, wondering when courage becomes folly.
By late 1942, the illusion of power had shattered. Italy's armies suffered defeat after defeat in Greece, in North Africa. Bombs fell on Milan and Naples, and fear replaced fervor. Ciano, stripped of power and isolated, wrote bitterly in his diary, "The steel has corroded. The pact now enslaves Italy." He met Mussolini one final time in the Villa Torlonia gardens. "We are losing everything," Ciano said softly. Mussolini stared into the distance. "History will forgive us." Ciano replied, voice trembling, "Only if there is anyone left to write it." The once proud alliance had turned to ruin. Shadows lengthened across the villa lawns as the sun dipped behind smoke-darkened clouds.
January 1944. Imprisoned in Verona, Ciano awaited his fate. Once a diplomat of the realm, now condemned by the regime he helped create. The world beyond the prison walls burned, the Axis collapsing beneath Allied advance. He wrote his final entries, reflecting on the day he signed that fateful document. The Pact of Steel bound 2 men by ambition, but chained millions to suffering. At dawn, he was led into the courtyard, pale light glinting off the snow. Ciano looked east, toward the memory of Rome, and whispered, "Perhaps history will understand." The rifles cracked, and silence reclaimed the winter air. The Pact of Steel ended as it began, in hubris, ambition, and tragedy.